The Galactic Council had existed for over 50,000 years. It was a gathering of 1,200 species from every corner of the known universe. They had mapped billions of stars, colonized millions of worlds, and built civilizations that stretched across the darkness of space. They believed they understood everything about the cosmos. They were wrong. In the deepest archives of the Council, there existed a single file that no one was allowed to access. It was older than the Council itself. It spoke of a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, located in the outer spiral arm of a medium-sized galaxy. The file contained only one instruction that had been passed down through countless generations of Council leaders: stay away from Earth. Do not make contact. Do not observe. Do not interfere. The quarantine must never be broken. No one remembered why this rule existed. The original creators of the quarantine had died long ago, and their reasons had turned to dust with them. But the Council obeyed the ancient command without question. They placed warning beacons around the entire solar system. They erased Earth from every star map. They made it illegal to even speak of the planet in official chambers. For 12,000 years, Earth remained hidden from the galaxy, forgotten by all except a handful of historians who whispered about it in dark corners. Commander was not supposed to be anywhere near the quarantine zone. He was a soldier of the Empire, the most powerful military force in the Council. His ship, the Eternal Blade, had been traveling through hyperspace when a catastrophic engine failure threw them out of the tunnel and into normal space. When his navigation officer checked their position, the color drained from his gray face. They were sitting at the edge of the Forbidden System. Earth was less than 3 light hours away. Stared at with a mixture of fear and curiosity. His entire life, he had heard stories about this place. Some said it was home to a plague that could wipe out entire civilizations. Others claimed that ancient demons lived there, beings of pure destruction that had nearly destroyed the First Council. A few believed that Earth was simply empty, a dead rock that the Council elders had used as a symbol of their authority. The ship systems were failing rapidly. Life support would last another 40 hours at most. The nearest Council outpost was 60 hours away at their current speed. Looked at his crew of 32 soldiers and scientists. He looked at the blue planet glowing on his screen. He made a choice that would change the history of the universe. The Eternal Blade descended through Earth's atmosphere on emergency thrusters, had expected to find ruins or perhaps nothing at all. Instead, he found cities. Billions of lights sparkled across the night side of the planet. Vehicles moved through the air and on the ground. Massive structures reached toward the sky. This was not a dead world. This was a thriving civilization. The ship crashed in a field outside a large urban center. Wen and his crew emerged from the wreckage. They were surrounded by military vehicles within minutes. Soldiers in primitive but effective armor pointed weapons at them, raised his hands in the universal gesture of surrender. He had studied enough alien species to recognize intelligence when he saw it. These beings were clearly capable of communication. The first human he met was a woman named General Sarah. She was small compared to 7-foot frame, but her eyes held no fear. She spoke in a language that his translator could not understand, but she quickly adapted. She brought technology that allowed them to communicate. Within hours, learned the truth that the Council had hidden for 12,000 years. Humans were not primitives, they were not plague carriers, they were not demons. They were something far more terrifying. They were survivors. General explained their history. 12,000 years ago, humans had been a spacefaring species. They had built ships, explored nearby stars, and made first contact with the ancient races that would eventually form the Galactic Council. But the relationship had soured quickly. Humans were different from other species in ways that frightened the galaxy. They adapted too quickly. They learned too fast. They showed resilience that other races considered impossible. When a devastating war broke out between the major galactic powers, humans refused to take sides. They demanded peace and offered to mediate the conflict. This was seen as an insult by both sides. The warring factions, enemies in everything else, united for one purpose. They would destroy humanity before these strange beings could grow strong enough to threaten them. The attack came without warning. Fleets from 7 different species surrounded Earth and her colonies. They expected an easy victory. They were met with resistance unlike anything they had ever encountered. Humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. Every ship that fell was replaced by 3 more. Every colony that burned only hardened human resolve. The war lasted 300 years, and though humans were pushed back to their home system, they were never conquered. In the end, the Council's ancestors made a desperate decision. They could not destroy humanity, but they could contain them. They deployed an ancient weapon, a technology so old that its origins were unknown. It created a barrier around the entire solar system, a wall of twisted space that nothing could pass through. No signal could escape. No ship could enter. Earth was cut off from the universe completely. The Council believed that without access to resources beyond their system, humans would eventually wither and die. They expected to return in a few centuries and find nothing but ruins. Instead, they chose to forget. They erased the records of the war. They destroyed the evidence of their failed genocide. They told themselves that Earth was dangerous and must be avoided, but they never explained why. For 12,000 years, humanity survived alone. Listen to General's story with growing horror. His people, prided themselves on being strong and resilient. They had colonized difficult worlds and fought hard wars, but nothing in their history compared to what humans had endured. Trapped in a single system with limited resources, any other species would have collapsed into chaos and extinction. Humans had done the opposite. They had turned inward and rebuilt their civilization from nothing. They had developed new technologies that were different from anything the galaxy used. They had learned to recycle every atom, to grow food in space, to generate energy from sources that Council scientists had considered impossible. They had expanded to every moon and asteroid in their system. They had built stations around their sun. They had created a civilization of 50 billion people, in a space that the Council would have considered barely adequate for a few million. But that was not the secret that the Council feared. General took to a facility deep beneath the mountains of a continent called Asia. There, in a chamber that had been sealed for over 10,000 years, he saw the truth. The ancient weapon that had trapped humanity was not of Council origin. It was human. The technology that created the barrier had been invented on Earth long before humans ever reached the stars. It was part of a larger system, a network of devices that had been built by a human civilization that existed before recorded history. The Council's ancestors had not deployed an ancient weapon. They had accidentally activated a defense system that humans themselves had created in a forgotten age. The barrier was never meant to keep humans in. It was meant to keep something else out. General showed the records that human scientists had pieced together over thousands of years of isolation. Long before the current human civilization, perhaps 100,000 years ago, another human society had existed. They had been far more advanced than the current Council. They had traveled between galaxies. They had manipulated the fabric of reality itself. And they had fought a war against an enemy so terrible that they had chosen to hide their entire species rather than risk exposure. The barrier around Earth's solar system was a shield. The true purpose of the quarantine was not to punish humans but to protect them. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between galaxies, something ancient and hostile still waited. The first human civilization had sacrificed everything to ensure that this enemy would never find Earth. They had erased their own existence, devolved their technology, and started over from nothing. They had trusted that their descendants would eventually rediscover the truth and prepare for what was coming. Understood now why the Council had been afraid. They had sensed something different about humans, something that went beyond their resilience and adaptability. Humans carried within them the genetic memory of a war that had shaped the universe. They were not primitives who had developed technology. They were the descendants of gods who had chosen to forget their own power. The barrier was failing. Human scientists had detected fluctuations in the shield over the past decade. Within a century, perhaps less, the wall would collapse completely. When that happened, two things would occur. Humanity would rejoin the galaxy, and the ancient enemy would finally detect Earth's location. General offered a choice. He could return to the Council and report what he had found. He could warn the galaxy that the quarantine was ending and that an ancient threat was awakening. Or he could stay on Earth and help humanity prepare for what was coming. Thought about his people. He thought about the Council and their lies. He thought about the billions of beings across the galaxy who had no idea what was about to happen. Most importantly, he thought about the humans he had met. They were not afraid. After 12,000 years of isolation, after being betrayed and abandoned by the galaxy, they were not bitter or broken. They were ready. He made his decision. 6 months later, stood on the bridge of a human warship as it passed through the barrier for the first time in 12. Behind him were 100 other vessels, the vanguard of a fleet that humanity had been building in secret for generations. They carried weapons that the Council had never seen, technologies that had been refined over thousands of years of isolation. The first message humanity sent to the galaxy was simple. We remember what you did. We forgive you. And we are coming to help because the real enemy is waking up and you are going to need us. Across 1,000 worlds, beings looked up at the stars and felt something they had not experienced in ages. Hope. The forgotten children of Earth had returned, and they brought with them the fire that had once conquered the darkness between galaxies. The Council had thought they were containing a threat. Instead, they had been protecting the only species in the universe that could save them all. Humanity was finally home.